On television, they were portrayed as real-life superheroes, but away from the flashing cameras and the roar of the crowd, a much darker reality was hiding in plain sight. The brutal reality of professional wrestling is that the physical toll is only half the battle. Behind the scenes, many of these women were dealing with severe mental health struggles, toxic relationships, and a relentless dependency on prescription drugs just to make it to the next town. And unfortunately, for some of the industry's brightest stars, the pressure cooker of the wrestling business would ultimately push them over the edge. From shocking, sudden passings that left everyone speechless to deeply disturbing cases that the major promotions tried their absolute best to sweep under the rug. The stories behind these downfalls are as tragic as they are frustrating, because in almost every single scenario, they were entirely preventable. So how did the wrestling industry fail these women when they needed help the most? In this video, we investigate the most tragic deaths of female wrestlers and the dark secrets left behind in the wake of their passing.
China shattered expectations and completely redefined women's wrestling in the late 1990s. But after she was shut out by WWE, Joanie Laurer's life took a very different direction away from the ring, marked by fame, addiction, and deep isolation.
Through the arena, I saw her and I went, holy cow. That's probably the most impressive girl I've ever seen.
Joanie Laurer made her WWF debut in 1997 as the intimidating enforcer of D-Generation X. But her ambition went beyond being muscle at ringside. She wanted to compete between the ropes, and she wanted to wrestle men. At first, Vince McMahon strongly opposed the idea. However, after the two began training together, Vince was stunned by Joanie's raw strength and athleticism. She could lift more than most of the men on the roster, and that changed his mind. Soon, he began booking her against male competitors. 1999 became the defining year of Chyna's career. Her popularity exploded. She became the first woman to ever enter the Royal Rumble and the only woman in history to win the Intercontinental Championship. For the first time in WWF history, a woman was portrayed as an equal to the men, not a novelty act. Mainstream media took notice. Chyna appeared on magazine covers, talk shows, sitcoms, and quickly became a symbol of empowerment for women everywhere. In just a few short years, she crossed over into pop culture and became a celebrity in her own right. With that momentum, Chyna set her sights even higher. She wanted to become the first ever female WWF champion. In 2000, Playboy magazine approached her with an offer to pose nude. This is where Vince McMahon stepped in. He warned her directly that if she went through with the shoot, she would never hold the WWF championship. It was an impossible decision. That single Playboy deal promised more money than she had earned throughout her entire wrestling career combined.
She did the Playboy thing. When I did my Playboy, I made more money doing one Playboy than I had in 5 years cumulatively of working for the company.
Joanie ultimately accepted the offer, a choice that would become the biggest mistake of her career. Vince was livid almost immediately. Her matches against men were stopped, and she was pushed into the Divas division. It was a terrible fit. Chyna was simply too large and powerful to have believable matches with the other women.
6 years I had wrestled men, and then all of a sudden I wasn't supposed to fight the guys anymore, and I was supposed to be this women's champion, and who was I going to fight?
But is it possible that the public does not want to see men losing to women?
Yeah, but there was nobody there at that point that didn't want to wrestle me. How was I going to step backwards and wrestle women that didn't have the experience from the guys that I was wrestling every day?
They're taking this woman, 5'9", muscular, and turning her into a diva. Although they couldn't chisel her down into a 5'5", size 2, they did the best they could to make her a diva.
Tension between her and Vince reached a breaking point. They went from training together regularly to barely speaking. Around the same time, her contract was nearing renegotiation and her leverage was already gone. She made things worse by demanding a guaranteed $1 million salary, money usually reserved for top stars like Steve Austin.
Well, we decided not to renew her contract. Her deal to me was, Chyna is as valuable to WWE as Stone Cold Steve Austin is.
Because I did feel that I was top talent there, and I was included in every other aspect as far as top talent was concerned, except for financially.
She wanted to be cut loose, or she wouldn't have demanded $1 million a year.
We'll go to SummerSlam this Sunday
But the final blow to her WWF career came from her personal life. Chyna had once been deeply involved with Triple H, but their relationship ended painfully when he began dating Stephanie McMahon, Vince's daughter.
Love, you can't stop love. But I was like, how then do I deal with the emotional side of this happening and keeping my job and like moving forward?
With everything collapsing at once, Joanie was released from WWF in late 2001. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Before WWE, Joanie had drifted through life without direction. She was estranged from her mother and had lost contact with her sister. WWF gave her something she had never had before: a family, a sense of purpose, and belonging. She even viewed Vince McMahon as the father figure she'd always lacked. When that was taken away, it left an enormous void. Realizing she needed to act fast to survive financially, Joanie tried to capitalize on her fame outside wrestling. She enjoyed her brief TV appearances in the past, so she moved to California with hopes of becoming an actress. But opportunities were scarce. She landed only minor walk-on roles, and interest in her quickly faded once she was no longer a WWF star. Panic set in, and Joanie began drinking heavily to manage her anxiety. That's when Sean Waltman, known to fans as X-Pac, entered her life again. Recently released from WWE himself due to substance issues, the two began a relationship that quickly spiraled into heavy alcohol and drug abuse.
The two had kind of meshed. But I think at the same time, those two weren't good for each other.
It happened so quick. That's when I started noticing like a lot of the drugs and like a lot of the crazy stuff, thinking like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Now I'm getting into another situation. How do I deal with this?
I just started dabbling and using crystal meth at the time. I was hiding my drug use from her, and I didn't realize at the time that she was hiding hers from me as well.
In 2002, Joanie was offered a chance with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Both she and Sean relocated to Tokyo. NJPW President Antonio Inoki promised her matches against men, something she desperately wanted. Her Japanese run was building toward a massive main event against Hiroyoshi Tenzan at the Tokyo Dome. It looked like the start of a major comeback, but her substance problems followed her overseas and intensified. Joanie began missing shows and appearances, and Inoki realized she was becoming a liability. To avoid scandal, he released her. Back in the US, Joanie and Sean fell into crystal meth addiction. Desperate for money, they released a homemade adult film titled One Night in China, which reportedly earned her $100,000. She later claimed she was cheated out of her share, but regardless, the damage was done. The negative publicity far outweighed any financial benefit, further damaging her reputation and destroying any realistic chance of a WWE return.
Of course, I was like sucked right into that whole thing, and you know, next thing you know, he's rolling up in Hummers and like making all this money, and it was awful. It was an awful experience, and again, it was one of those things. Again, still, I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to say, "Oh yeah, hey," and then it would go away, or get into it. But I call it the rape tape. It was a horrible experience. And, I was able to...
Not long after, Joanie was arrested for physically assaulting Sean, ending their relationship. Around this time, her sister Kathy reconnected, deeply worried about her condition. In interviews, Kathy later said Joanie was in complete denial about her addiction and refused help. A massive argument followed, and Joanie stormed out. The sisters never saw each other again.
Are you now into alcohol big time? Are you having a problem with it?
No.
You're not having a problem.
I want to party and I don't want to be the designated driver.
Running out of options, Joanie appeared on multiple reality TV shows, often humiliating herself by showing up intoxicated. This was also when she legally changed her name to Chyna, so she could use it professionally, since WWE still owned the trademark. Many believe she hit rock bottom when she appeared on Celebrity Rehab. Dr. Drew Pinsky later revealed that Chyna suffered from deep, unresolved trauma. Her behavior and personality shifted drastically depending on her environment, leading him to suspect undiagnosed mental health conditions. Despite multiple attempts to help her, she resisted treatment and never fully committed to recovery. Dr. Drew described her as complicated but kind, and someone who deserved far better support than she received. In 2011, Chyna made a brief return to wrestling with TNA, teaming with Kurt Angle against Jeff and Karen Jarrett. She forced Karen to tap out, reminding fans of her star power. Contract talks followed, but TNA abruptly ended negotiations after learning she had signed with an adult film studio. The final blow was a WWE parody film that featured adult actors portraying Triple H, Vince McMahon, and Stephanie McMahon.
I guess she just said, oh well, screw it, let's go ahead and do porn and make money.
I don't care if you're a porn fan, you're a wrestling fan, you're a reality fan, you're gonna love this movie.
She's trying to get work. A company comes along, an adult film company, treats her with respect, puts her high up on a pedestal, gives her money. I understand that.
In 2013, China returned to Japan hoping for a fresh start. She worked as an English teacher, but relocating didn't fix her problems. Her mental health continued to decline, leading to multiple arrests for disorderly conduct. She documented her loneliness on YouTube, openly expressing how isolated she felt. Eventually, she returned to the US and agreed to participate in a documentary titled The Reconstruction of China. It appeared to be a turning point. She reconnected with fans, attended signings, and was genuinely shocked by how many people still admired her. In August 2015, at Roddy Piper's funeral, China saw Triple H for the first time in years. They reportedly embraced and spoke privately, reconnecting after decades of silence. She also re-established contact with her mother, exchanging emails and planning to reunite. But just before they could meet, China relapsed and sent an angry email that severed the relationship once again. Despite visible progress, her demons remained. Her social media posts became increasingly erratic until they suddenly stopped altogether. When her manager checked on her apartment, he found her dead.
China, whose real name was Joni Laurer, was found dead Wednesday in Redona Beach, California. Authorities say there is no sign of foul play. She became one of the best known and most popular female professional wrestlers in history.
On her nightstand were bottles of Valium and Ambien. Authorities believe her death was an accidental overdose, not suicide. China forever changed women's wrestling. Her power, presence, and fearlessness opened doors for future generations, even if she never lived to fully see her influence. 3 years after her passing, WWE inducted her into the Hall of Fame as part of D-Generation X, but for Joni Laurer, it came far too late. Wrestling was the only place she ever truly felt accepted, only for that family to turn away when she needed it most.
China was able to break every glass ceiling in women's wrestling, and she became a hallmark that paved the way for future female wrestlers. The same can't be said about Hana Himura, whose life was cut short before she could reach her potentials.
In the world of Japanese professional wrestling, there is a sacred, unwritten concept known as fighting spirit. It is the intangible ability to take the absolute hardest hit of your life, look your opponent dead in the eye, and stand right back up. It's about defiance in the face of pain. Hana Kimura had more fighting spirit than almost anyone who ever stepped inside a squared circle. With her signature shock of neon pink hair, her rebellious charisma, and a smile that could genuinely light up the Tokyo Dome, she wasn't just another wrestler on a roster. She was a movement. She was the future of the industry. But on May 23, 2020, the girl who spent her entire life standing back up finally stayed down. This isn't just a story about a tragedy, and it isn't just another piece of true crime commentary. This is a story about what happens when the boundary between reality and entertainment becomes a literal death trap. It's an exploration of how a medium designed to entertain hijacked a young woman's life, and how an anonymous internet culture weaponized her humanity against her. To understand Hana's story, you have to understand that she was born directly into the business. Her mother, Kyoko Kimura, was an absolute legend of the Japanese deathmatch circuit. Kyoko was a woman who literally bled for a living, competing in brutal barbed wire matches where survival was the only real victory. Hana grew up in the chaotic backstage world of wrestling locker rooms, watching her mother get stitched up after matches, breathing in the smell of sweat, canvas, and rubbing alcohol. But Hana was destined to be a very different kind of star. She was Hafu, of Indonesian and Japanese descent. In Japan, a society that traditionally places an incredibly high premium on cultural homogeneity and conformity, standing out can be a heavy burden. As a child, Hana faced bullying and isolation for looking different. But instead of letting that crush her, she did what any true fighter does. She turned that exact otherness into her ultimate superpower. When she entered the professional wrestling world, she didn't try to blend in. She leaned completely into her uniqueness. By the time she became the leader of her own faction within the Stardom promotion, a cyberpunk-inspired group called the Tokyo Cyber Squad, her message to the world was loud, clear, and unapologetic. Everyone is different. Everyone is special. She was a breath of fresh air. Hana blended high-flying, hard-hitting athletic prowess with a vibrant streetwear fashion sense. At just 22 years old, she was a champion, a certified icon, and a role model to thousands of young girls who felt like outsiders. She was on top of the world, capturing the attention of the global wrestling community. And that is precisely when the executive producers from Netflix and Fuji Television called. Terrace House was supposed to be the nice alternative to toxic Western reality television. There were no manufactured shouting matches, no forced physical altercations, and no artificial drama. The premise was deceptively simple. 6 young strangers, 3 men and 3 women, moving into a stunning luxury home in Tokyo, going about their daily lives, driving nice cars, and looking for love. For Hana, accepting the offer to join the cast wasn't about vanity. She saw it as a massive, unprecedented opportunity to bring the niche world of Japanese women's professional wrestling to a mainstream global audience. But reality TV, no matter how polite the presentation seems on the surface, is inherently a psychological weapon. It relies on conflict, and when natural conflict doesn't happen, it has to be cultivated. In early 2020, Terrace House aired an episode featuring what internet forums now notoriously refer to as the costume incident. Hana had accidentally left her expensive, custom-made, one-of-a-kind wrestling gear in the communal washing machine. Another housemate, a young man named Kai, unknowingly ran his own laundry right after her, drastically shrinking and completely ruining the gear Hana had worn for some of the biggest matches of her career. To Hana, this wasn't just clothing, it was her livelihood, an extension of her wrestling identity, and a deeply sentimental possession. She got incredibly upset. She raised her voice, confronted him, and in a moment of intense frustration, knocked a hat off his head. To a normal person looking at this objectively, it was just a terribly bad day. It was a standard household argument fueled by exhaustion and poor communication. But to the reality show producers, this footage was absolute narrative gold. They had found their villain. What the public didn't see at the time was the heavy-handed manipulation happening behind the scenes. Behind closed doors, producers were actively coaching Hana, pressuring her to act more aggressive, telling her to slap Kai, and urging her to play up her volatile wrestler persona for the cameras. Hana, wanting to be a professional and cooperate with the production crew, played the part. She leaned into the role, completely unaware that she was participating in a production that would cost her everything. As that specific episode streamed across Netflix into over 190 countries, a digital tidal wave began to build in the darkness of the internet. Almost overnight, Hana's phone transformed from a tool of connection into a direct pipeline of pure poison. The global reach of Netflix meant that the backlash wasn't localized. It was an international onslaught. She was targeted by a relentless barrage of anonymous accounts, receiving hundreds of vitriolic messages every single day. Die. Disappear. You're a monster. Get out of Japan. The people typing these comments completely forgot they were looking at a real, breathing 22-year-old girl. Through the screen, they treated her like a fictional villain, a pixelated character in a video game they desperately wanted to delete. The psychological toll of thousands of people wishing for your death simultaneously is something the human brain is simply not evolved to handle. Behind the scenes, away from the ring lights, Hana was spiraling. She began self-harming, and her peers reported seeing her crying uncontrollably in the locker rooms before matches. Yet, because she was a professional wrestler, because she possessed that deeply ingrained fighting spirit, she tried to post through the pain. She tried to keep smiling for her fans, putting on the neon gear, and pretending the digital world wasn't closing in on her. But human beings have a breaking point no matter how much fighting spirit they possess. In the early morning hours of May 23, 2020, Hana uploaded a series of troubling images to social media, followed by a heartbreaking final post. It was a photo of herself with her beloved cat. The caption was a devastating farewell. "I love you. Have a long, happy life. I'm sorry." Later that day, it was confirmed that Hana Kimura had taken her own life via toxic gas. The world lost an incredibly bright, empathetic light because thousands of people could no longer distinguish a complex human being from a highly manipulated 22-minute edit. The fallout throughout Japan and the global wrestling community was immediate and profound. The collective shock quickly turned into overwhelming grief and then into righteous fury. Terrace House immediately canceled the remainder of its season and was permanently taken off the air, its reputation as a wholesome show shattered forever. The public outcry forced a mirror up to the face of internet culture. Spurred by the tireless, relentless campaigning of Hana's mother, Kyoko Kimura, the Japanese government took unprecedented action. They officially passed what is now known as Hana's Law, a landmark piece of legislation that significantly tightened criminal penalties for online insults and cyberbullying, making internet defamation punishable by stiffer fines and actual jail time. But as Kyoko herself has pointed out in numerous interviews, laws do not bring back daughters. A piece of legislation cannot fill the void left at the family dinner table or inside the wrestling ring. Today, if you attend a Stardom show in Tokyo, you will still see the profound impact of her legacy. You will see fans proudly sporting neon pink hair. You will see the stands filled with people wearing "Everyone is Special" t-shirts. Hana Kimura didn't just leave behind a tragedy. She left behind a massive global warning. She lived her life at 100 miles per hour, actively seeking love, acceptance, and connection in a modern world that all too often rewards outrage, division, and cruelty. We live in an era where it is incredibly easy to forget that there is a real person sitting on the other side of a username. We owe it to her memory to protect the vulnerable, to show empathy to those under the spotlight, and above all else, to always remember the beautiful, vibrant girl, not the comment section.
Cyberbullying is a tragedy in itself, but what happens when a person is sexually assaulted and abused, but is silenced by the powers that be, as we'll see in the story of Ashley Massaro?
In the mid-2000s, professional wrestling was looking for a specific kind of magic. It found it in Ashley Massaro. With her punk rock aesthetic, infectious smile, and an undeniable raw charisma, she captured the hearts of millions almost overnight. She was the ultimate girl next door who could rock a wrestling ring, a superstar in the making with the world at her feet. But behind the bright pyrotechnics, the magazine covers, and the deafening cheers lay a dark, spiraling reality. This is not a story of triumph. This is the devastating account of a dream that became a nightmare, a career that broke a body, and a system that ultimately failed a human being.
In 2006, WWE superstar Ashley Massaro was allegedly drugged and raped by multiple U.S. servicemen while on a trip to Kuwait.
Ashley Marie Massaro was born on May 26, 1979 in New York City. Growing up in a family deeply rooted in amateur wrestling and boxing, athleticism was practically in her blood. She was vibrant, fiercely competitive, and exceptionally driven. Ashley pursued a degree in communication from State University of New York at Albany, while simultaneously breaking into the modeling world. She found early success competing in pageant solicitations and winning the Miss Hawaiian Tropic USA title in 2002. To the outside world, she was a young woman conquering every goal she set for herself. She was educated, beautiful, and ambitious, but modeling was just a stepping stone. In 2005, a corporate juggernaut called World Wrestling Entertainment came calling. Ashley saw an opportunity for stardom. She had no way of knowing that she was stepping into a meat grinder. In the summer of 2005, WWE launched its Raw Diva Search. Ashley entered, and her punk rock style immediately set her apart from the traditional pageant contestants. The fans chose her. On August 15, 2005, she was declared the winner, receiving a one-year contract and $100,000. She was instantly thrust into the deep end of a brutal, relentless industry. Within months, Ashley was a focal point of WWE television. She feuded with the top stars of the era, aligned herself with champions, and by 2007, she wrestled at WrestleMania 23 in front of over 80,000 people. Weeks later, she appeared on the cover of Playboy magazine, the absolute pinnacle of mainstream exposure for a female performer at the time. From the outside, she was living a fairy tale. But the reality of the wrestling business in the mid-2000s was unforgiving. The travel schedule was grueling, 300 days a year on the road, driving hundreds of miles between cities, sleeping in cheap hotels, and performing through intense physical pain. For the women of that era, the pressure to look perfect while performing high-risk maneuvers with minimal training was immense. Ashley was desperate to prove she belonged, and that desperation would cost her dearly.
You were in the WWE at the same time as Ashley Massaro, correct?
Yeah.
Did you have a relationship with Ashley at all? I mean, relationship like as a friend? Did you know her?
Yeah. She was very nice. She traveled with me, and she rode with me and Orden a couple of times. Just
Did you ever notice she was having these type of mental breakdowns or problems, or she always seemed upbeat while wrestling?
But like it's hard to tell. Sometimes you can't tell with people up there, or you're so wrapped up in kind of what you're doing maybe, or like you really kind of put on a mask. I think a lot of times when you're working there, like you almost have to be I don't want to say you walk in and you be like, I have to be the masterpiece, Chris Masters, from the minute I go to leave, but you kind of have to, you know what I mean? Or at least you have to, you don't always want to show vulnerability.
The human body is not designed to absorb the impact of a professional wrestling ring day after day. For Ashley, the physical toll came quickly, and it came hard. In early 2006, just months into her career, she suffered a fractured fibula. She was rushed back to television before she could fully heal. The cycle of injury and premature return had begun. Over the next 2 years, she would suffer a severely chipped radius in her arm, multiple concussions, and agonizing spinal injuries. In an industry where if you don't work, you don't get paid, hiding pain becomes a survival mechanism. To cope with the relentless schedule and the agonizing physical trauma, Ashley, like many of her contemporaries, turned to prescription medication. The vibrant young woman from New York was slowly being eroded, replaced by a cycle of chronic pain, pill dependency, and profound exhaustion. In 2008, Ashley made the heartbreaking decision to walk away from the World Wrestling Federation. Her official reason was to care for her ailing daughter, Alexa. But behind closed doors, she was a broken person, trying to escape a world that had fractured her body and mind. The spotlights were turned off, the fans moved on. Ashley was left alone in the quiet. Life after the cameras stop rolling can be a terrifying void for a former superstar. For Ashley, the years following her WWE departure were defined by a silent, agonizing downward spiral. The physical injuries she sustained in the ring didn't heal. They mutated into chronic, everyday torture. She suffered from severe depression, debilitating anxiety, and memory gaps, symptoms that would later be heavily linked to repeated head trauma. In 2016, Ashley joined a mass tort lawsuit against WWE. In her affidavit, she gave a chilling account of her time there. She alleged that the company routinely ignored her concussions, forcing her to perform while severely injured. Even more harrowing, she disclosed a deeply traumatic incident from a 2006 WWE tribute tour to U.S. troops in Kuwait, alleging she had been drugged and sexually assaulted by a military physician. She claimed that when she reported the assault to WWE executives, she was told to keep quiet to avoid ruining the company's relationship with the military.
In 2006, WWE superstar Ashley Massaro was allegedly drugged and raped by multiple U.S. servicemen while on a trip to Kuwait. She claimed that she told Vince McMahon and other executives at the WWE, but that they covered it up and asked her to as well.
WWE denied the allegations, and the lawsuit was eventually dismissed due to the statute of limitations. But for Ashley, the damage was already done. She felt abandoned, silenced, and completely broken by the entity she had given her youth to. By 2019, Ashley was trying to rebuild. She was working as a radio DJ in New York and training for a wrestling comeback, desperate to reclaim a piece of the identity she had lost. But the darkness inside was too heavy. The combination of severe neurological damage, unaddressed trauma, and profound depression formed an inescapable prison.
Well, wrestling fans and a community on Long Island are mourning the sudden death of a former star.
Yeah, Ashley Massaro was...
On May 16, 2019, just 10 days before her 40th birthday, Ashley Massaro failed to show up for her shift at the radio station. Emergency personnel were called to her home in Smithtown, New York. There they found Ashley. She had taken her own life. The news sent shockwaves through the wrestling world. The girl who brought so much light to the screen had succumbed to an absolute, overwhelming darkness. Following her death, in accordance with her wishes, her family requested that her brain be donated to science to be tested for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, the degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head injuries. They wanted answers. They wanted to know why the vibrant Ashley they loved had slipped away long before her heart stopped beating. Ashley Massaro was a daughter, a mother, and a star. Her life was a fleeting, brilliant flash of light. but her story remains a haunting, tragic reminder of the human cost of entertainment.
It doesn't matter if you're a sweetheart or loved and protected by all. Tragedy in wrestling shows no respect. Miss Elizabeth had to find this out the hard way.
The world of sports entertainment was shocked 2 weeks ago by the untimely death of the First Lady of Wrestling, Miss Elizabeth Hewlett.
A lot of people may think that being in the business she seemed happy, but I don't know if that's true.
When she was here, there was a very caring environment. You know, we all look out for each other, and it's one big family. And when she went to WCW, as it was known then, there wasn't the same family.
In the 1980s, professional wrestling was a world built on testosterone, heavy metal, and larger-than-life violence. It was loud, it was brash. But in 1985, a quiet elegance walked into the World Wrestling Federation. She didn't cut screaming promos. She didn't wrestle. Yet, she became one of the most iconic figures of the golden era. Her name was Elizabeth Hewlett, known to millions simply as Miss Elizabeth, the undisputed First Lady of Wrestling. To the fans, she was a fairy tale princess, but behind the bright lights of WrestleMania, the glamorous evening gowns, and the roaring crowds lay a deeply tragic reality. A story of intense backstage control, a dissolving marriage, and a toxic spiral after the cameras stopped rolling.
Elizabeth was an icon and a role model for so many women. Her character was something that brought a lot of feeling and emotion to the matches.
Elizabeth didn't background her way into the business. She met the macho man, Randy Savage, while working behind the scenes at an independent wrestling promotion in Kentucky, and they married in 1984. When Savage signed with Vince McMahon's WWF, the company used their real-life relationship to build a legendary storyline. On television, Savage was the paranoid, overprotective villain, and Elizabeth was the elegant, silent protector who balanced his explosive chaos.
Randy Macho Man Savage and Miss Elizabeth were wrestling royalty, and their roller coaster romance captivated audiences around the world.
It's Bonnie and Clyde, it's Romeo and Juliet. They were the first, male-female package that was created in that new WWF model. They were the first and they were the best.
The dynamic was electric. Elizabeth became the emotional anchor of the company. When Savage won the World Championship at WrestleMania 4, it was Elizabeth who stood by his side, celebrating a victory that felt as much hers as it was his. Later, her presence inadvertently caused the dramatic split of the Mega Powers, the iconic tag team of Savage and Hulk Hogan. The storyline was built on Savage's fictional paranoia over Hogan's friendship with Elizabeth. But backstage, the fiction wasn't far from the truth. Savage's on-screen paranoia closely mirrored his real-world behavior. Peers from that era frequently noted that Savage was intensely protective of Elizabeth, often keeping her locked in her dressing room, completely isolated from the rest of the male-dominated roster.
Well, a lot of people wondered, did Randy really control her in and out of the ring? Absolutely.
Randy, very protective of her. My God, you have no idea. And he would get visibly upset with anybody that tried to talk to her or carry on a conversation with her. He just did not like it.
The peak of Elizabeth's career came at WrestleMania 7 in 1991. After Savage lost a career-ending match, he was attacked in the ring by his villainous manager. Elizabeth, sitting in the crowd, couldn't watch anymore. She jumped the barricade, threw the attacker out of the ring, and reunited with Savage. Grown adults in the arena were openly weeping. It remains one of the most genuinely emotional moments in wrestling history. Shortly after, the WWF hosted an on-screen wedding for the couple at SummerSlam 1991, billed as the match made in heaven. But the tragedy of the story is the timing. By the time the world watched them exchange vows on pay-per-view, their real-life marriage was already collapsing under the weight of the business and constant pressure. In 1992, they quietly divorced. Elizabeth left the WWF seeking a life away from the wrestling spotlight. In 1996, lured by the big money of World Championship Wrestling, Elizabeth returned to the industry, but the wrestling landscape had shifted drastically. The innocent fairy tale world of the 80s was gone, replaced by the cynical, edgy Attitude Era. In WCW, Elizabeth was no longer the pristine First Lady. She became a villainous manager, joining the NWO, participating in underhanded tactics, and eventually being paired on-screen and off-screen with wrestler Lex Luger. Her relationship with Luger marked a turning point. Friends noticed a shift in Elizabeth. The woman who had once been known for her quiet, clean lifestyle was adjusting to a fast-paced environment where prescription painkillers, alcohol, and muscle relaxers were commonplace. When WCW folded in 2001, the camera stopped rolling for good. Without the structure of the wrestling business, her personal life began to spiral out of control. In early 2003, the dark realities of her private life made headlines. In April, police were called to the townhouse she shared with Luger, following a domestic dispute where Elizabeth sustained minor injuries. Just a few weeks later, on May 1st, 2003, Luger called 911.
She's laying on the floor. I've tried to pick her up. I've tried to...
Okay, what I want you to do, I want you to go over and see if she's breathing.
I can't tell. Please send somebody here who knows what they're doing.
I understand that, sir. I have somebody on the way. But if she's not breathing, you need to help her breathe. You need to find out whether or not she's breathing. Go over to her. Roll her, put her on... Sir.
Oh, my God. Oh, please send somebody.
Listen to me. You have got to help her. Lean down.
I'm trying. I've been trying to help her.
Lean down and check and see if she's breathing. Look at her chest. See if it's rising.
Doesn't look like it is. I'm scared to death.
Elizabeth was unresponsive in their home, having stopped breathing. Emergency responders rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. Elizabeth Hewlett was pronounced dead. She was just 42 years old. The medical examiner later concluded that her cause of death was acute toxicity, an accidental overdose caused by a lethal mix of alcohol and prescription painkillers. The news devastated a generation of fans who remembered her as the purest symbol of their childhood fandom. She wasn't a wrestler, but she redefined what a woman could be in an industry that rarely showed women respect. Miss Elizabeth's story is a sobering reminder of the human cost behind the golden era of sports entertainment. She gave the world elegance, grace, and unmatched magic, but the very business that made her an icon ultimately cast a long, tragic shadow over her life.